Ava traced the rim of her wineglass, staring out over the city skyline. The glittering lights below mocked her, reminding her of the life she had built and the one that had crumbled beneath her feet. He had taken everything from her. Trust, love, her very sense of self. Nathaniel Carlyle. The name alone was enough to tighten her throat, anger coiling in her chest like a snake ready to strike. He had whispered promises into her ear, made her believe in forever, only to betray her in the cruelest way. Ava had been naive. No more. Their story had begun like a whirlwind. Nathaniel, with his magnetic charm and piercing gaze, had swept Ava off her feet. Their connection was undeniable. Nights filled with laughter, whispered confessions, and dreams woven together beneath the city lights. Ava had trusted him with her heart, believing they were destined for something extraordinary. But the illusion shattered the night she discovered the truth. Nathaniel had been leading a double life, a hidden affair with a business associate named Susan that had not only broken her heart but jeopardized her professional reputation. The betrayal cut deeper than words could express, leaving Ava grappling with a mixture of heartbreak and humiliation. For months, she had crafted her plan, each detail meticulously arranged. Nathaniel would regret underestimating her. His business, his reputation, everything he held dear would collapse piece by piece, leaving him with nothing, just as he had left her. But as she stood outside his office that evening, ready to put the final stage of her revenge into motion, something unexpected happened. She caught sight of him through the window, shoulders slumped, forehead pressed against his palm. He looked broken. The satisfaction she had imagined did not come. Instead, an ache bloomed in her chest. Memories surfaced, his laughter, the way he had once looked at her as if she were his entire world. "Shake it off, girl, he's not worth it." Ava had spent so long fueling her rage, convincing herself she despised him. But standing there now, she had to face the truth. The pain hadn't erased her love. It had only buried it beneath layers of bitterness and hurt. Revenge had been her plan. But what did she really want? To watch him suffer? Or to know why he had done it? Her fingers tightened around the folder containing the evidence that would destroy him. A decision had to be made, and she had never felt more unsure. The next evening, Ava confronted Nathaniel face to face. "Why, Nathaniel? Why did you do it?" she demanded, her voice sharp with the weight of her pain. Nathaniel's gaze darkened with something between sorrow and fear. "Ava, I can't go into detail about what happened with Susan. It would put her in danger, and you too." Ava's breath caught in her throat. The cryptic response twisted her stomach into knots. This wasn't the answer she expected. Doubt crept in, mixing with her lingering feelings. What wasn't he telling her? And why did the truth feel more dangerous than the betrayal itself? Things were not as they seemed. Unable to shake the feeling that something was amiss, Ava began digging into Susan's past. But every trail led to a dead end, as if Susan had never existed. Frustrated but determined, she hired a private detective to uncover the truth. Days later, the detective returned with shocking news. Susan was Nathaniel's half-sister. Their father, Aidan, had had an affair, and when Susan's mother threatened to expose the truth, she was coerced into silence with threats against her family. This dark secret forced Susan into a life of secrecy and fear, constantly looking over her shoulder. Her mother, fearing for Susan's safety, had uprooted their lives and vanished from the public eye, leaving Susan to grow up without the father she longed to know. Nathaniel learned about Susan when his father became gravely ill and stepped down as head of the company. As Aidan lay in his hospital bed, believing his time was near, he summoned Nathaniel and confessed the truth, a confession steeped in guilt and sorrow. Aidan made Nathaniel promise to protect Susan from the dangers that surrounded their family, particularly from his own brother, James. Aidan revealed that James was more than just a corporate schemer. He had deep ties to powerful and dangerous individuals who operated both within and outside the law. James's influence extended into the darkest corners of the business world, manipulating outcomes and eliminating threats with ruthless efficiency. Now, with his father's burden resting heavily on his shoulders, Nathaniel found himself trapped in a web of deceit and danger. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford, and the lines between ally and enemy had become impossibly blurred. The more he uncovered, the more he realized. The true threat had yet to reveal itself, and it was closer than anyone could imagine. Nathaniel's world shifted with the weight of this revelation. Suddenly, the lines between family loyalty and moral responsibility blurred. His father's plea for protection wasn't just about inheritance, it was about shielding Susan from a man whose reach could destroy anyone who stood in his way. James, aware that Nathaniel was protecting Susan, became increasingly hostile. One evening during a tense confrontation in Nathaniel's office, James leaned in close and hissed, "You can't hide her forever. I have no problem eliminating you both if you stand in my way." His eyes, cold and calculating, left no doubt that this was a promise, not a threat. Nathaniel's blood ran cold as he realized the stakes had risen to a deadly level. Ava needed answers. Determined to expose the truth, she secretly met with Nathaniel's best friend, Dave, at a discreet location outside the city. Their conversation began cautiously, with Dave initially hesitant to betray the family's private matters. But Ava's determination and genuine concern for Nathaniel and Susan gradually won him over. After some convincing, Dave agreed to help Ava take down James, recognizing the danger his old friend faced. Together, they contacted old college mates who had no direct connection to Nathaniel, ensuring their identities would remain unknown to anyone within the company. They assembled a skilled team with expertise in high-tech surveillance, IT hacking, legal counsel, and even contacts within the FBI. Each member was carefully selected for their discretion, loyalty, and willingness to challenge a powerful adversary. Their network spanned different parts of the country, with operatives stationed in key locations to monitor James's activities. Using encrypted communication channels and secure data servers, the team began gathering evidence of James's illegal dealings, tracing financial transactions, intercepted emails, and shadowing his associates. The team's surveillance uncovered a web of bribery, embezzlement, and intimidation tactics that James had used to maintain his grip on the company. As the investigation deepened, Ava coordinated the team's efforts, ensuring that every piece of evidence would be admissible in court. The legal counselors on the team prepared documents outlining James's crimes, while the FBI contacts verified and cross-referenced the findings to ensure their case was airtight. Meanwhile, the IT specialists hacked into encrypted company servers, uncovering hidden files that detailed years of corruption and manipulation. Throughout this operation, Ava maintained regular contact with Dave, relying on his insights into the company's inner workings. Their growing trust and shared mission forged a bond that strengthened their resolve. They knew that success depended on timing and precision. The moment to strike had to be perfect. Meanwhile, James accelerated his plans, aiming for a hostile takeover of the company. His goal was not only to remove Nathaniel from power, but also to gain control of his personal financial assets, preventing Susan from receiving her rightful inheritance. Using forged documents, James planned to present a damning case to the company's board of directors. Under the guise of an urgent corporate crisis, he called for an emergency board meeting, intending to oust Nathaniel once and for all. On the day of the meeting, as James stood before the board with his fabricated evidence, Ava pays Aiden an unexpected visit. Ava sat with Aiden in his home office, carefully revealing the full extent of her efforts to stop James. Aiden's eyes welled with both gratitude and sorrow as he gripped her hand. Moments later, Aiden got a huge surprise. His daughter Susan walks into the room. For the first time in 26 years, he was able to meet her face to face. Tears falling as he embraced her, whispering apologies for the years they had lost. Meanwhile, James accelerated his plans, aiming for a hostile takeover of the company. His goal was not only to remove Nathaniel from power, but also to gain control of his personal financial assets, preventing Susan from receiving her rightful inheritance. Using forged documents, James planned to present a damning case to the company's board of directors. Under the guise of an urgent corporate crisis, he called for an emergency board meeting, intending to oust Nathaniel once and for all. On the day of the meeting, as James stood before the board with his fabricated evidence, tension filled the air. His voice was steady, but there was a glint of arrogance in his eyes as he presented forged documents and twisted facts to support his case. Board members exchanged uncertain glances, their trust in Nathaniel wavering with each manipulated statement. As James prepared to deliver his final blow, the air seemed to thicken with anticipation. Just as his lips parted to utter the words that would seal Nathaniel's fate, chaos erupted. The double doors burst open with a force that silenced the room, and FBI agents stormed inside, their badges glinting under the fluorescent lights. Gasps echoed around the room as officers moved swiftly toward James, their commands sharp and unwavering. James's face contorted with shock and fury. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his voice a mix of disbelief and defiance. His gaze darted toward Nathaniel, suspicion and realization dawning simultaneously. "This is your doing," he spat, his eyes blazing with hatred. The lead agent stepped forward, holding up an arrest warrant. "James Carlisle, you are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, embezzlement, and multiple counts of criminal misconduct. You have the right to remain silent." "Do you know who I am?" James interrupted, his voice rising with desperation as two agents gripped his arms. His composure crumbled as he struggled against their hold, his once confident facade giving way to panic. "You can't do this. I built this company. I will ruin you all." His threats echoed through the boardroom, but no one moved to support him. News cameras stationed outside captured every moment, broadcasting the dramatic scene live. The footage of James being escorted out in handcuffs would dominate headlines for days to come. As he was led past the board members, his eyes locked on Nathaniel with a final, venomous glare. "This isn't over," he hissed through clenched teeth, his voice low but filled with malice. Nathaniel, standing tall at the head of the conference table, met his uncle's gaze with unflinching resolve. "It is over," he replied firmly. "Your reign of fear ends today." Silence settled over the room as the doors closed behind the departing agents. The board members, still reeling from the spectacle, turned to Nathaniel with a mixture of respect and renewed trust. Though the fallout would be significant, the path forward was clear. Nathaniel had proven his strength, integrity, and commitment to restoring the company's reputation. In the days that followed, Nathaniel took swift action to secure the company's future. Determined to root out corruption, he identified all of James' allies within the organization. Each was thoroughly investigated, and those found guilty of criminal activities were swiftly fired and handed over to law enforcement. The fallout was immense, but Nathaniel faced it head-on, determined to rebuild the company with integrity. With the support of loyal colleagues and newfound allies, he led the company into a new era, one marked by transparency, trust, and resilience. In the aftermath of James's arrest, Nathaniel discovered the full extent of Ava and Dave's involvement in saving both him and Susan. The revelation struck him with a wave of emotion, gratitude, astonishment, and a touch of guilt for not realizing their efforts sooner. He sought Ava out, finding her on the balcony of her apartment, overlooking the city lights that once seemed to mock her. "Ava?" he called softly, stepping beside her. She turned, surprise flickering in her eyes as Nathaniel's gaze searched hers with unspoken words. "Dave told me everything. The surveillance, the FBI, the risks you took. You saved my life, Susan's life, and the company. I don't know how to thank you." Ava's breath caught as his hand found hers. "I couldn't stand by and watch James destroy you. I did what I had to do," she replied, her voice steady but laced with the vulnerability of the journey they'd endured. Nathaniel squeezed her hand, his heart heavy with both remorse and hope. "I never meant to hurt you, Ava. Everything that happened, it was never meant to come between us." Silence hung between them, the city's distant hum the only sound as Ava processed the sincerity in his words. Finally, she whispered, "I just want to know if there's still a chance for us." Without hesitation, Nathaniel stepped closer, cupping her face as his thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "There is," he murmured. "If you'll have me, there is." And as their lips met in a kiss that spoke of forgiveness, resilience, and a future reclaimed from the shadows of the past, the city lights no longer seemed to mock. Now they shimmered with the promise of new beginnings. Thank you for listening to this heartwarming story by Green Tea Tales. Please help our channel to grow by like, share, and subscribe.